What is going on, traders? We got a lot to talk about in this video. Before we start, like, subscribe, comment your thoughts below. Let's get into it. So, what do you know? We finally got that drop that I've been talking about for the past 2 or 3 videos. And the question remains, are we going to continue to drop from here, or are we going to start seeing a bounce, dead cat bounce, whatever you want to call it, maybe even a Santa rally? And so, we're going to go over that. But first, we got to look at the VIX because the VIX is telling us something, and I think it's very important. We need to pay attention to this. And so right now we're looking at the 4 hour time frame. You see it, I see it. One of our favorite patterns on this channel, a falling wedge on the VIX. And so the question is, are we going to break out from here? Now, keep in mind we do have CPI data at 8:30 Eastern tomorrow, and that can very much cause a breakout from this point in the VIX. And if the VIX does break out towards the upside, then obviously we're going to see downside in the market. Just in case you don't know, they move inverse of each other. But me, I don't think we're quite there yet. I don't think we're ready for this move. And don't get me wrong, I still think the VIX is going to see 18. I did mention this in the last video. I still think we're going to get there. I would even go as high as about 20, where we could see this gap get filled right here at that 20.3 range. But I don't think we're quite there yet. I don't think we're ready to see that move just yet. And I could be wrong. It is the VIX. I will absolutely be okay with being wrong here. But again, I don't think this is going to be the case. What I think is going to happen is that we fill this gap all the way at the $13 range, 13 strike range, whatever you want to call it. Now, if we're being very optimistic, if we're just being super greedy, very optimistic, we can go as low as about 11.69. And this is not me coping. I genuinely think that this is very much a possible move. Now, if you're wondering where I'm getting this level from, where I'm getting support from, if you simply just zoom out on the VIX, this level has been respected numerous times. I mean, you bounced here multiple times. You tried to break below it, bull stepped in. I mean, it goes all the way back, guys. So 11.69, if we're being optimistic, if we're being extremely bullish, and I would imagine if this is the level that the VIX is going to head towards, then I think this will be the motivation toward behind a Santa rally, right? Because that's what everyone's expecting. Now, historically, Santa rallies don't happen until after Christmas. I know a lot of traders expect it to happen before. Honestly, I think we've pretty much already got majority of our Santa rally. I mean, the market's been pumping like 95% of the year, right? So that's just me. But if we are talking about a Santa rally coming, I would think the VIX is going to head towards 11.69. Now, if we're being humble, we're being conservative, then I would just watch for a gap fill at 13. And then we can possibly talk about some type of double bottom here. And then we break a neckline at around 14.3 and break out of this falling wedge and head as high as about that $20 range right here where this gap needs to get filled. So that's what I'm looking at in regards to the VIX. If I was going to pay attention to anything tomorrow, and I mean anything in regards to news such as CPI, I would be looking at the VIX. That's just me. Do what you want with this information. And so next we got to look at the NQ because where are we on the NQ? And so I told you guys in the last video, right? In the last video, I told you guys that I do think we're going to see one more pump in the NQ. And what's interesting here is if we do pump, we can head as high as about 21,822K. Now, the main thing that's bothering me here, okay, the main thing that's bothering me, and I'm sure you guys are seeing it, we have us a head and shoulders pattern. You got your shoulder here, you got your head here, okay? You got another shoulder here, right? So we do have a head and shoulders pattern. And then if we're talking about a neckline, we're looking at our neckline right here. And so far, we're below that neckline. So we can be heading towards 21,000 to 80 range between tomorrow and Thursday, right? And so we already talked about this in the last video, so this shouldn't be new to anyone who's already watched the last video. But if you are new here, I do think there is potential for a move towards 21,000 to 80. Now, that's not a big move, okay? Believe it or not, that's not an insane move to the downside, okay? At least in my opinion. And if we're paying attention to like big tech and everything, big tech is not really reacting to the NQ or the triple Qs dropping. I mean, Apple's still pumping. We got Apple still pumping, Microsoft still pumping. The only one that's really dropping is Nvidia. So that could be what NQ is just reacting to. And so we do have us a head and shoulders pattern. So I would definitely keep this in mind and watch for a potential move towards that 21,000 280 range and then possibly bounce from there. Because if we do head here, then we're pretty much at the supply and demand zone, but not only at the supply and demand zone, but we're basically at the bottom of the rising wedge. And then from there, I do think that it can influence a bounce all the way towards 21,800. And then I imagine if this does happen, then that will lead to the VIX heading towards that 11.69 target, right? And so that's what I'm looking at in regards to the NQ. We look at the ES. And this is why I say downside is very limited in my opinion, because look at where we are on the ES. Okay, we have this rising channel here on the daily time frame. And yeah, we rolled over, right? We talked about this. We rolled over this rising wedge pattern. It looks much better on the smaller time frames. We'll get a better look in a minute. But we rolled over in this rising wedge pattern and we're starting to head down, right? And so I told you guys a target that we need to look out for is 6,050, which ironic enough, we are there after hours. And so, if we are talking about a bounce, and this is why I think we're going to see at least one more bounce, because look at how much more upside we have here. There's a huge void right here, and I imagine this is going to want to get filled. Market makers are going to fill this area before we even talk about downside. Okay. So we can head as high. I would even go as far as to say 6,300. I believe Tom Lee even said that was a target that he's looking at. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. But lowest, if we're being humble, we can look at 6,180, 6,200 range. So anywhere on towards the top of this channel is what I'm looking at. And so again, a lot of space up here, a lot of opportunity up here for bulls. And I imagine when we do see a pump, if we do see a pump from here, then they're going to take advantage of this. So that's what I'm looking at for the ES. Let's look at the SPY. And so I told you guys, after 604, we're looking at a move towards 602. And we got there. We got to 602.8. Did we get any lower than that? Yeah, we got 602.13. So spot on with the targets once again. Everyone keeps doubting me, and I keep proving them wrong almost every video. So it's crazy, okay? But 602 is what we're looking at. And again, I want to stand by what I said in the last video. 598. If we break below 598, that is when I start throwing all my bullish theses out the window because that's when things can get really, really ugly. But we'll talk about that if and when we get there. But 598, you definitely want to pay attention to that. Now, as long as we stay above 600, I think we're pretty bullish. Okay. I think overall we're pretty bullish and we're still in some very, very safe territory. Okay. So that's what we want to see. We want to see us stay at least above 600 and then 598, we're pushing it, but anything below 598 is where things get pretty scary. And so in regards to the SPY, I want to see us get back above this level at around 608, 608, 608.2, somewhere around there, somewhere around here, right? I want to see us get above that and start heading towards that target of 614, 612, 614, somewhere around that range, right at the top of this rising channel. So I do think if we are going to see more upside or a pump back towards the upside, I'm looking as high as about 612, 614. I mean, obviously, I guess we could just say 615 as a psych level, but regardless, somewhere around the top of this channel is what I'm looking at in regards to the SPY. And so we would like to see a bounce from 600. That's what I would like to see. If we get below 600, then I think it's going to be a simple trap, a potential bear trap where we just see 598. Everyone's panicking because we broke below 600 because that's a psych level. And then boom, bulls step in, and then we start heading towards 614, possibly leading us into that Santa rally that everyone's anticipating, right? And so we look at the triple Qs. And so the triple Qs, I mean, you gotta love these patterns, man. I don't know what to tell you guys. These patterns are just like clockwork when it comes to these rising wedge and falling wedges. I mean, this it's just easy money. Okay, so we rejected the top of the rising wedge, and I mean it's crazy because we're heading towards the gap fill. I mean, I talked about this in the past two, three videos where I did say that there is a chance we're going to see a sell off, and the lowest I'm looking at is 516.5, 517. And crazy enough, people thought I was just wrong and just making things up. It's really crazy when you have a gap right here and somehow people are telling you you're wrong. Like, it's right there. Okay, so at some point in time, the triple Qs has to feel this. Okay, like it or not, whether you're bullish or not, you have to use some logic, some type of common sense here, and just realize that, yeah, there's a gap here. So there's a high chance that he's right about some downside happening. And so we rejected the top of the rising wedge. And so far, we're right at the top of this gap. Now, I will say this. Okay, what do we know about gaps? We talk about this on the channel all the time. Gaps have very strong support and resistance. So we don't necessarily have to fill this gap right away. Okay, we don't. Okay, I will say that much. We can just bounce from here and just head towards 528, 530. That is a target I am looking at. I gave you guys 520, I gave you guys 525. We hit both of those targets, and I still think triple Qs is going to head towards the 530s. It's just all a matter of when that's going to happen. I don't know. Maybe CPI influences it. Maybe I don't know. Santa rally influences it. I don't know. But regardless, that is a target I am looking at until we start breaking below very, very key levels. I still think we're going to see one more pump towards the upside, 530. I mean, if we're being very, very greedy, and I mean super greedy, we can go as high as about 535, guys. That's what I'm looking at for the triple Qs. And so let's talk about Bitcoin. So Bitcoin is still trying its best. I mean, bulls are really stepping in or trying their best to step in. I mean, look at these bullish wicks that just keep coming in. They do not want Bitcoin to break down. As long as we stay below 97K, I just don't have much for Bitcoin, guys. Honestly, I mean, we can start heading as low as 85K. Now, what I will say is that these bullish wicks, if I'm trying to be bearish, I wouldn't be. Okay, if I wanted to be bearish, I just wouldn't be on Bitcoin. These bullish wicks, I just hate. Okay, I don't like these bullish wicks. There's bulls all in this area. So, I mean, even if we do drop, bulls can just step in and just rip us back up. So, really tough for me to be bearish right now as long as we stay within these wicks, these bullish wicks. If we start stopping these guys out of their position, then we can talk. So, I would say if we break below at least 90K, then we can start talking about that move towards 85K. But for now, I just don't trust Bitcoin. Okay, I just don't trust it in either direction until we like at least see a back above 100K or see below 90K. That's what I'm looking at for Bitcoin. And so let's talk about some stocks, right? Let's talk about SMH Semiconductor ETF, and then of course we'll look at AVGO earnings and all that fun stuff. But yeah, I mean we talked about this, right? We talked about this multiple times where I said AVGO looks like it wants to drop, and it did. I mean, we go down to the 2 hour time frame. Let's go to the 2 hour time frame so we can get a better look at this pattern. And it's a little bit sloppy, but bear with me here. So you had a head and shoulders pattern. We talked about this. We talked about this, right? In the last video or so. Shoulder here, shoulder here, and then you just broke completely down. I even showed you guys on the options chain a few videos ago that there were 240 puts. This was when SMH was all the way at 248. 248, 247, give or take. And I showed you guys on the options chain for December 27th that there were 240 puts. And look what happens. You drop all the way below 240. So congratulations if you took that play. We got in on that play, but we took profit pretty early. But regardless, I mean, this thing it just tanked to the downside. So whatever well took that play, they made absolute money. Okay. So in regards to where we can go from here, I think after this gap fill, we will see a bounce. I do. Okay, we will see a bounce. Now, whether that plays with AVGO earnings is tough to say. We'll look at AVGO in a bit, but for now, I would focus on this gap fill. It looks like we feel. Oh, we did fill it. Okay, so we filled this gap already. I didn't even notice that. Okay, so we filled this gap already. So I do think there is potential for a bounce from here towards the 245, 244 range, somewhere around here. Let's actually map it out real quick. So right about there, you're looking at a move towards 244.8, maybe a retest before potentially breaking down all over again and seeing a move further to the downside. Okay, so that's what we're looking at for SMH. So don't be surprised if we do see a bounce from here again. Not semiconductor support and resistance are very strong within gaps. Not only that, but I mean, until we really break below these guys right here and stop them out of their position at around, I would say 234, I wouldn't be too bearish from this point. Okay, just not extremely bearish. I mean, sure, we're bearish, but I wouldn't be too bearish until we start really breaking below 234. So that's what I'm going to be looking at. So I do expect some type of bounce from here, maybe a dead cat bounce, a retest back towards the upside. And then from there, maybe we see a further breakdown. We'll see. Okay, so that's what I'm looking at for SMH. Now, Nvidia. And so I told you guys, Nvidia. I told you guys about Nvidia. It's crazy. I give you guys liquid gold on this channel, and I still get doubted, right? So Nvidia. So we talked about a potential inverse head and shoulders pattern, and I mean, So much for that. Okay. It pretty much gave up that 237 level, and from there it was just all downhill. I mean, maybe not all down here. Maybe there's something here. I will say that this is a piercing line pattern. It's not convincing. I will say that much. On the 4 hour time frame, you do have a piercing line pattern, so that kind of lines up with SMH bouncing back towards 244.8, 245, somewhere around that range. But this isn't convincing for me. I would have liked to seen a bigger bullish candle from here. But this is something to pay attention to. So if Nvidia breaks back above 237, then we can easily see a retest towards 141 for 142 range, and then from there we'll have to see what happens. But yeah, that's what I'm looking at in regards to Nvidia. Now, in regards to downside for Nvidia, if we stop these guys out of their position at around the not two, why am I saying two, 130 area, somewhere around this 130 area, then we can start heading towards at least as low as 125, 126. We'll talk about that when we get there. But other than that, that's all I have for Nvidia. It's not looking too great. It's not looking too bad just yet. But yeah, this thing is just solo dropping the triple Qs. And the reason why I say that is because when you look at everything else, I mean, you look at Apple, right? Um, Apple is Apple's still going up, right? And so this kind of worries me. I'm not gonna lie to you guys. Again, I would love to see Apple retest this area down here at around at least 244, but the lowest I'm looking at is about 237.5. I don't know where my plots went, but regardless, I would like to see Apple retest 237.5 before heading higher, because I do think Apple has way more upside to go, a lot of more upside to go. I would even go as far as to say about 260s for Apple. So that's what I'm looking at. I would really like to see Apple retest 237.5. I may get that move, I may not. I'm really hoping for it, but if not, then it is what it is. We just miss out. But it's kind of bothering me. It's kind of bothering me how Apple and a lot of these big tech names are still holding up. Okay, and the reason why I say that is because it could be a delay. Okay, when we're seeing the triple Qs, the SPY, and the ETFs indices drop, but you got big names still holding up. It could be a delay, and we could be looking at a much bigger drop coming in. And I could be wrong. Maybe they're just holding up because it's just an overreaction in the market, or the triple Qs needs to cool down, and maybe they're just simply preventing a crash or whatever. I don't know. It's just a bunch of head canon right now. But regardless, I'm still kind of iffy about how things are holding up. I mean, you got Tesla breaking above 400 and it's holding 400. Again, you got Microsoft just holding up. You got Google still going higher. Congratulations to Discord members. We played the crap out of Google. We got in at around, when did we get in Google? We played Google at around, I want to say 176, 175. Yeah, somewhere around there. We did 177.5 calls yesterday, and we absolutely made a bag off of that thing. So yeah, here. So this is how much I made off the play. Made about 3K off the play. So absolutely killed it for Google. If you were paying attention to Google, this thing went ballistic after hours, and during the day it just kept going. But back to my point, you're just seeing a lot of big names continue to go up while the triple Qs and the SPY is dropping. I mean, the triple Qs dropped from like 525 to 520, but then you got Google going up. You got Microsoft still, holding its ground. You got Apple going up, and it's kind of crazy, right? So I wouldn't say it's something to worry about until it's actually something to worry about. It's just something to keep in mind. But at some point in time, Google needs to revisit this. Okay, this is very illiquid. Like this area right here is extremely illiquid. So at some point in time, Google is going to drop down here. It's just a matter of when. So I would look for a retest at around 178.5, and then from there we'll see what happens. But very illiquid area. I would watch out for Google in regards to that. But yeah, so that's my main concern in the overall market. Just a lot of big tech names just not following through with the triple Qs, and maybe that's a good thing, but I would lean more as a bad thing for now until I'm proven wrong, and I can very much be proven wrong in this case. But regardless, something to look out for. So let's talk about AVGO, because AVGO has earnings coming up, and I imagine that AVGO is going to influence semiconductors, right? Because we're seeing semiconductors drop. And so, what's interesting about AVGO is that we have potential for an inverse head and shoulders pattern. Now, I will say this much: when I play earnings, because we've won like 4 earnings plays in a row in the Discord, right? When I play earnings, I look for fair value gaps. Um, a lot of majority of AVGO's fair value gaps are to the downside. There's like none to the upside. There's one all the way down to 140. So right here, so this very illiquid area, there's a fair value gap, and then there's a fair value gap around here somewhere. So that's the main thing that's bothering me. But if we're being optimistic and if we're being really bullish in regards to AVGO, you have a head. I mean, yeah, you have a shoulder here, right? You have a head here, and then you have a potential shoulder forming here. Okay, and then your neckline would be right there. So this is what I will be looking out for in regards to AVGO. Because I think AVGO has the potential to make or break the market, okay, or at least make or break Nvidia, semiconductors, so on and so forth. If AVGO, if the market is bullish come Thursday, like if it start pumping Thursday, I think this is going to play out. But if the market is like bearish, and I mean like really bearish for Thursday, then I think we're going to see more downside and start clearing out those fair value gaps. Because usually that's what happens with earnings. Earnings is an excuse to get rid of those fair value gaps that's like really far away. So that's what I'm looking at for AVGO. I would obviously I'm going to want more confirmation, and of course I'm going to let Discord members know if I'm going to trade it or not. We're right now we're just on a crazy winning streak in regards to earnings plays. We've won 4 in a row so far, and so might add this one to my list. We're also going to look to play Adobe, but I'm waiting to see what the whales are going to do in regards to these earnings plays, and then we'll go from there. But this is something to mark on your charts in regards to AVGO, and then we'll see what happens from there. But other than that, kind of dragged this video a long time. One more thing, IWM, the Russell, this thing hates me. But the Russell, so the Russell is really fighting this 237 level. Really fighting it. We saw a move as low as about 235.92. I told you guys that I think that's going to be the next level from there. But a lot of puts are still coming in for the Russell, so I will look for a move towards this 224 gap fill. I do think that's going to happen. I wouldn't say soon, but between this month and next month, I do think we're going to start filling this gap all the way to 224. It's just a matter of when. So that's what I'm looking at for the Russell. And I imagine when this happens, then the market is going to be tanking at that point. So something to look out for. Other than that, that's all I have for this video. Discord link is in the description below if you want to see how we're going to trade this market, how we're going to trade AVGO earnings, Adobe earnings, if we're going to trade them at all. And other than that, if you have questions, comment your thoughts below. If you agree, let me know. If you disagree, let me know as well. Maybe I missed something. Just keep it respectful as always. Until the next video, traders, you have a good one.